The following is a sermon that was preached at Hope Lutheran Church in Manhattan, Kansas. For more information about our church or to watch and listen to past sermons from Hope, visit manhattanhope.com. Thank you for listening.
For the words and works of Jesus, I would invite you to please stand. Our gospel this morning, and also the basis for today's sermon, comes from Matthew chapter 5, verses 1 through 12. Now, when Jesus saw the crowds, he went up on a mountainside and sat down. His disciples came to him, and he began to teach them. He said, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when people insult you, persecute you, and falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me. Rejoice and be glad, because great is your reward in heaven. For in the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you." The gospel of the Lord. Praise be to you, O Christ. Please be seated. By my count, 9 times Jesus says it in these verses. Blessed. 9 times Jesus says, blessed. And then I look at the types of people that Jesus is talking about here. The types of people that Jesus says are blessed. He says, the poor, the mourning, the meek, those who are hungering for something, those who are persecuted. I hear Jesus say blessed, and then I look at the types of people that he is describing, and it seems like there's this huge disconnect. How in the world does Jesus call these people blessed? Because these are not the typical kinds of things that we call blessed, right? What we call blessed are the things that we see on social media. That was kind of a trend for a while. I don't think it's still a trend, but hashtag blessed was this thing for a while where people would post when things were going really, really well in their life. When they just got the kitchen remodeled, when the kids all lined up for a picture and were smiling, when they went on an awesome vacation. People would post, people talk about hashtag blessed. My life is so blessed. Look at all this stuff that's going on in my life right now. I'm so blessed. That's the picture that we think of when it comes to this word blessed. When we hear blessed, we think of people who are healthy, wealthy, wise, who have everything figured out. Everything is going right in their life. That's who we think of when we think of blessed. And yet here's what Jesus says. The poor, the meek, the lowly, the hungering, the persecuted. All of these people that Jesus calls blessed, and it seems like there's a disconnect. And so, we're really left with one of two options. Either Jesus just doesn't know what he's talking about here, and he's totally wrong. And I'm willing to bet none of us think that's the case. And so, if the problem isn't with Jesus, the problem's got to be with us and our understanding of what it means to be blessed. You see, when we think of blessed, you know what word also comes to mind for most of us? Happy. And it's 100% true that this word blessed can be translated happy. There are some Bible translations that will take this word and translate it happy. The thing about what we conceive of, think of as happiness, blessedness, is that our idea of what it means to be blessed, our idea of what it means to be happy, is almost always reliant upon the circumstances of our life. What do I mean? Here's what it looks like. It means that we call ourselves blessed. It means that we describe ourselves as happy when things are going well. When our health is exactly perfect, exactly the right place where we want it to be. That's when we call ourselves blessed. That's when we can say, oh, I'm so happy right now. We call ourselves blessed. We call ourselves happy when the checkbook, when the savings account, when the pockets feel comfortable. We call ourselves blessed. We call ourselves happy when all of the relationships in our life just seem to be clicking in all the right ways. That's when we call ourselves blessed. That's when we call ourselves happy. And if any of those things are lacking in our lives, what do? What does the rest of the world tell us we need to do? The world says, it's your fault. So, get after it. Eat a little healthier. Have a better morning routine. Spend your money more wisely. Do all of these kinds of things. You have to manufacture your own blessing, your own happiness. And if you don't have blessing, if you don't have happiness, no one else's fault but your own. And we so easily get sucked into that. We fall into that trap of thinking, oh, okay, if I'm going to be blessed, if I'm going to be happy, I got to make it for myself. I got to do it for myself. And then, because we're Christians and because we take what Jesus says seriously, you know what we do with Jesus' words here? We turn Jesus' words here into a to-do list. We look at what Jesus says here as a list of commands. And so we tell ourselves, okay, I just got to be more meek. I just got to be more humble. I just got to be more lowly. I just got to be more peacemaking. I just got to. And maybe if I do that, then I'll feel blessed. Then I'll feel happy. The problem with that is it can really ultimately only lead to one of two places. It either leads to pride or it leads to despair. When I turn Jesus' list of things that he talks about here into a to-do list, it turns into pride because maybe I do the things that Jesus says here. I'm humble, I'm lowly, I'm peacemaking. And then things do start to go kind of well for me. I see an outward change in my life. And then I start to tell myself, well, I figured that out for myself. Do I really need God? Do I really need Jesus to help me figure out anything else in my life? It turns into this deadly thing where pride says, you know what? I'm pretty good on my own. I can figure this out for myself. Yeah, Jesus got me pretty far, but from now on, I don't really need him. When we turn this into a to-do list, a checklist of things to do, it can lead us to pride. And pride's deadly. Or we think of this as a to-do list and it leads to despair. And maybe that's the one that feels more common. We look at the circumstances of our lives and we think, yeah, this kind of feels like it describes me. So why don't I feel any different? Or we look at this and we say, well, this does describe me, and it just doesn't seem like it's worth it. What's the point of it all? What's the point of being poor in spirit, mourning, being meek, hungering? What's the point of it all? When we turn Jesus' words here into a to-do list, into a checklist, it never goes well for us. And here's why. It's because Jesus didn't speak these words as a checklist. He didn't give us these words as things that we're supposed to do. This is just a description of who we are. Jesus just says, you're blessed. That's what he says, full stop. You are blessed. And then all of these things that he talks about describe the people who are blessed. Jesus says, you're blessed. But how can Jesus say that? How can Jesus say, you're blessed when you're poor in spirit, when you're meek, when you're lowly, when you're humble, when you're persecuted? How can Jesus say that? Well, he can say it because of himself. You know, I go through Jesus' list of things that he describes as blessed. And when I only focus on myself, then I am left asking all of these questions, wondering what this is all about. But read Jesus' list. Go back to Jesus, what he talks about here in these things that we call the Beatitudes, the blessings. And instead of thinking about ourselves, think of Jesus. Who's the one who was truly poor in spirit as he left the mansions and the glory of heaven? It's Jesus. Who mourned when he saw his friend die? Who mourned when he saw the effects of sin in a broken world? Jesus did. That described him. Who was persecuted because of righteousness? That was Jesus. As he faced trial and ridicule and was hung on a cross for the world to see. That was Jesus. And now, Jesus says, you and I are connected to him. Jesus is the blessed one, and now you and I are connected to him, so he can say to you and me, you are blessed. You remember who Jesus is talking to when it comes to all this? It says, his disciples came to him, and he began to teach them. Now, when you hear that word disciples, don't just think of those 12 original disciples who were following Jesus. This is everyone who's following Jesus. This is all believers back then, and that means he's talking to believers today. You know, the rest of the world is going to look at this list that Jesus has here and say, this doesn't make any sense. How can Jesus call you blessed? But you and I look at what Jesus says here, and we know we're blessed because we're his followers, we're his disciples, those who have been connected to him. And so that means everything that is true of Jesus, it's true of you. So Jesus really can look at you and call you blessed. Whether life is going super, super well or life feels like it's in the lowest dumps, Jesus can look at you and call you blessed because he has connected himself to you. Because he's made you his disciple. Because he's made you to be one who's connected to him. He does that when he comes to you in the places he promises to be, when he comes to you in word. And he says, you're my child. When he comforts you with your baptism and says, you've been adopted as one of my own. When he comes to you in the supper and he said, here's my body, here's my blood given for you. You're blessed. Because your sin has been forgiven, forgotten forever. Jesus says, you're blessed. Not because we're so great, not because we've figured it all out, but because of who he is and what he's done for us. That's why Jesus can look at you and me and just say, blessed. Blessed are you, whatever you're going through, whether it's good or it's bad. And yet I know that's so hard. I know it's so hard to rest secure in that. Because we live in this tension. We live in this in-between time where we know that we're called blessed, but then we go through our life and it doesn't feel that way. And so there's this pull, there's this tug, there's this tension as we live in the in-between. It's like we have one foot in heaven where we know the finality of all of these things, where we know where the final blessing is going to be, but then we have the other foot here on this side of eternity. And so we're living between these two places. It's like we're living between two worlds. And it can be so frustrating, can't it? To be living between those two kinds of things. We all hate the uncertainty. We all hate the stress that comes with all of this. You know, some of the things that Jesus talks about here, he talks about them in the future tense. He says, this is what's going to happen. You will receive these kinds of things. And then some of them are happening right now. You know what Jesus talks about here? It kind of reminds me of this bad habit that I have. It's probably a bad habit anyway. When I am reading a really intense book or watching a really intense movie, sometimes I cheat a little bit. I'll go to the last chapter of the book and I'll check out how the story ends. Because I want to know what's going to happen. When the characters are facing peril, when it seems like they're going to lose, I go to the end of the book and I say, I know they're going to win. Or if I'm watching a movie and I have to pause it because we're tired or whatever, going to bed that night, I'll go on Wikipedia, I'll look up the plot synopsis and say, oh, I know how it's going to end. And maybe that makes me a crazy person. Maybe that makes me take all the fun out of watching a movie or reading a really good book. But it also changes the way that I watch the movie, that I read the book. When a character seems like they're going to lose, they're going to die, the story's going to come to a close, I know that they're going to make it. And I'm able to see the ways that some of the things that they're going through right now foreshadow the things that are coming in the future. What Jesus tells us here in his Sermon on the Mount, it's kind of like he's giving us the last chapter of the book. He's saying, you're blessed. And whatever plot twists you go through right now, no matter how dire the circumstances look, the end result of all of it is that you are blessed. Jesus just calls all of it, he calls you blessed. And that totally changes how we look at everything right now. We can face the uncertainty, we can face the valleys, and know that we're blessed. And when things are going well and life feels really, really good, we can still say we're blessed, but not for the same reason as everybody else, but because of who's writing the story, who's with us in the midst of it all. Jesus calls all of it. He calls you and me blessed. Blessed for eternity, and that means we're blessed right now too. So as you head back into life this week, as you head back to Monday morning and everything that comes with it, yeah, there's going to be some plot twists. There's going to be some things you didn't expect. There's going to be highs, there's going to be lows, there's going to be everything in between. And in all of it, rest secure, knowing that because of what Jesus has done for you, and that he's connected himself to you, you are blessed. Jesus just calls you it. So that's what you are. Amen.